Hi guys, hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Hadil and I am aware that I started a channel and I haven't been posting on it at all. I do have a schedule now, and I say now, life gets in the way, but now I have a schedule and I'm clear on what I would like to post. So hopefully you will see posts from me on a weekly basis going forward. Today I want to talk about the book Notice. I want to do a book review on that. I read that last week. I started it last week and I finished it in a matter of days. I was really compelled. I found myself compelled to pick up the book and continue to read, whether I was on a break, a lunch break, or if I was commuting. Uh, it's one of those books that I I wanted to pick up and continue to read. I was really engaged with the story of Nenah. But before we get into that, I just want to say that, the first time this book came to my attention was when Ollie from Criminally talked about it as the most disturbing book that he has ever read. And at the time, the book wasn't actually available. I couldn't see it anywhere. I couldn't buy it. I was really intrigued by his review of it, and I wanted to read it. And actually, eventually it came back in stock. I think, Ollie, the traction that his video got had a lot to do with it. And it's actually the only book I've ever pre-ordered, and I was really, really intrigued to buy it. So I did buy it, and I'm so glad that I read it. I really liked the book. But let's get into that. So this book was written by an American author called Heather Lewis. She sadly committed suicide 2 years before the book was published. So the book was published posthumously. And this is a story of Nenah. Nenah is not her real name. This is a name that the main protagonist gives to people that she meets. And Nenah is a young woman. I've seen people say that she's 15, but there's nowhere in the book that indicated to me that she's underage, unless I missed it, but I couldn't see it anywhere. I got the impression that she was an adult, so she was at least 18 plus, maybe in her 20s, but I'm not too sure. I could be wrong on this. Nenah is a troubled young woman. We don't know much about her life, her childhood. We don't know anything about her parents. Her parents are mentioned very, very briefly, in that she lived with them at the beginning of the book. She lived with them, but it didn't seem like there was much of a relationship, and it's not clear why that is. It's not clear if the author deliberately avoided putting any kind of emphasis or importance on the parents of this character, and that was deliberate. Maybe the character experienced some kind of neglect or abuse growing up, but that's and the reason I think this is because what the character, because of the choices that she makes in life, makes me think, what is her childhood like, what is her family like. So I think that is an important aspect of people in general. Childhood and family can be extremely influential on how we are shaped growing up, and shapes our experiences and choices as well. So, but her parents are not mentioned. What we know of Nenah is that she has a job, she has a day job, some kind of a shift work, and she mentioned a store at some point. So I'm assuming that she worked in a store or a shop or something like that. I'm not too clear. However, after work, she chooses to essentially approach men, and she exchanges certain favors in exchange for money. And this is her story of a perpetual cycle of doing this, and also abuse, drinking and substance abuse as well. So it's a really, really sad story from the get-go. Her interaction with these people is very transactional. She seems to be very emotionally detached from these experiences. She's emotionally detached with the characters. She goes through the motions and makes money out of that. While she appears to be emotionally detached from the characters in the book, I, as the reader, can see what emotions she is actually experiencing, because Heather Lewis describes what is going through Nenah's mind, and describes the wide range of emotions that Nenah does actually experience throughout her experiences in the book. And I'll get into that in a moment. So from chapter 1, what we see is that there is this man. He is an unnamed character. We never know his name. He picks up Nenah and takes her home to his wife. So Nenah meets the wife, and the three of them engage in, you can say, a transaction. So Nenah experiences a wide range of emotions, and these are the adjectives that I actually made a note of that she experiences. She experiences throughout the book fear. Fear was quite prominent. Anger, sadness, grief, pain, hatred, shame, rage, sorrow, loneliness, and darkness. And she described herself as worthless. In one chapter, she says, "It left me lodged between shame and anger, left me wanting something to hold that could hurt me. Once that happened, the shift in me was so fast, I thought I'd go under forever. This rage came up and over me with such fierceness and sorrow, I feared I'd turn on her. While I felt in pieces and wanting badly for her to notice, except she didn't. And so I was left alone in my head where nothing good was happening." There was some evidence throughout the book of some positive feelings that Nenah experienced, but just very few occasions. She experienced desire, comfort, familiarity, and a sense of safety at one point. However, largely and for the most part, her experiences were extremely negative and horrific, and understandably her state of mind was not in a good place as a result. So from chapter 1, a nameless man approaches her, and he takes her home with him to his wife, Ingrid. Ingrid is actually a secondary character. However, she is fairly important. She becomes fairly important character in the book. And I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil it. But this man is horrible. He's cruel, and he has one thing on his mind, to use and abuse not only Nenah, but also his wife. His wife clearly is living a life of domestic violence with this man. So what ensues and what is described by the author is really horrific scenes, actually, not for the faint-hearted, and they can be extremely triggering. So actually it's really important to really pay attention to all the trigger warnings around this book. because it's not for everyone, and I can't recommend it for everyone. This man and his wife had a daughter, teenage daughter, 5 years ago. Well, she passed away 5 years ago, and that was not an accident, and it had something to do with the husband, as it's implied in the book. So that is something else that Nenah comes to realize about this really messed up couple, their dynamic, and their, and her now implication with them. So things change, things happen, and then Nenah makes a decision as a result of certain events, and it takes her on a different trajectory, and she makes choices that lead her elsewhere. And then she ends up meeting another really important character in the book, and this character is her psychotherapist, and her name is Beth. So Beth and Nenah have an interesting relationship. Nenah feels that she may be in love with this person. This love could be coming from trauma, could be coming from anywhere, could be coming from a sense of, like, a false sense of security. It's not very clear what Beth's intentions are. However, it's really important to note that Beth is in a position of power. She's a psychotherapist. She should be abiding by a code of conduct strongly, and she doesn't. She overcrosses these boundaries, and this is a young person. Nenah is a young person who is vulnerable and fragile, and the way I see Beth is somebody who is a predator because of her implication and the relationship that takes place between her and Nenah. So I really feel for Nenah. I feel so much for her. She is on a path of self-destruction. She, in some ways, she longs to be noticed, and the title of the book, Notice, that word is mentioned throughout the book. And Nenah longs to be noticed and longs to, I think she longs to be helped or saved or protected and loved, because we get an insight into some of her deeper feelings when she sort of dips into there a little bit, but a lot of the time she tries to come out of this in order to help her cope. She doesn't want to feel too much. I think Nenah might interpret Beth's actions as kindness or compassion and love, but the reality might be very, very different. It's like I say, it's not clear in the book what Beth's intentions are, apart from the obvious from my perspective. So at one point, Nenah says, "No one else noticed what went on with me. That was the point, not to notice. The point was for me to be forgotten." So it's really sad. It's really sad, actually. Another theme that is prevalent in the book throughout is the excessive drinking. Like I said, there's a cycle of substance abuse, alcohol, drinking, abuse, and food is rarely mentioned. I was thinking many times throughout the book, whenever she's talking about needing a drink, and she's going about her day, and where's the food? Is she not eating? Food is normally typically associated with joy, pleasure, nourishment. So food is a positive thing. And then we have Nenah, who all I'm reading as a reader is the drinking, the drugs, and not so much mention of the nourishment of the food. Or, you know, there was one point in the book where somebody makes food for her and she eats, and she hadn't eaten all day. Um, but apart from that, it wasn't really mentioned. I thought that was interesting, and to me that is quite telling as well. I think Nenah really ate just enough to survive, but the drinking was to help her cope. And she says, "I hated how clear-headed I was, how sober. I began drinking soon after. It didn't work very well. It only reminded me I needed so much more to cope." I thought this was a really well written story, and Nenah was, as a character, was depicted really, really well. And what made this book that much more powerful for me is the fact that I learned about Heather Lewis's own life and own story. I recently watched a YouTube video where she talked about certain aspects of her life, and she suffered abuse herself, and she I think the drinking, the drugs also were in her experiences. And the way she was talking in the video, she looked like she was struggling to get her words out, and she was you know, it looked like she was choking a little bit, getting emotional. So it was really, really hard for her, and it's so sad to know that she, you know, ended her life at age 40. And I wonder how much of herself went into that book, how much of the book reflected her own personal experiences. Notice is a tragic story of a seemingly endless cycle of addiction and abuse inflicted on a vulnerable and fragile young woman by monstrous predators, some of whom are strangers who cross her path and engage in the transactions that Nenah offers, and which some of them unfortunately escalate into horrific violence. And it's also perpetuated by characters who are meant to be in a position to help her, support her, protect her, and could have had the power or influence to help get her or lead her out of that situation. Um, Unfortunately, what ended up happening is that contributing to the perpetual cycle of abuse, and that's all from what I've seen in the book. That's all what Nenah seems to have experienced and witnessed, and that was her story. So this book is for anybody who is looking for a really real, raw, hard-hitting, emotional, tough read. This story is dark and it's bleak. There's no doubt about that. You need to be in the right mindset to be able to read this book. And it is a straightforward book to read. However, I mean, for me, it left me really pondering and reflecting over humanity and the cruelty that some people inflict on others, and what it must feel like to be so completely lost and completely stuck in such a difficult cycle, such as Nenah's story. And like I say, if you are in that mindset and you're looking to, if that sounds interesting to you, I do recommend reading the book. I really liked it. I didn't think that I would like it as much as I did. I don't know what to expect to be. I didn't know what to expect, to be honest. But I liked it, and yeah, it's a very well written book. And also, it makes me think about two other books that if I was to recommend, if you like this book, I would recommend two other books that are very different, but at the same time kind of a similar theme. And these two books are, the first one is called Unbroken. I'll I'll put up a picture of it on the video, and I'll put a picture up there. And the other one is Shuggy Bane. I also really liked this one, and I thought it was really, really well written. So, Notice by Heather Lewis. I hope I've been able to convey my review, and I hope I've been able to articulate myself okay. I'm not used to doing book reviews on video. I'm hoping to get better at this and feel a lot more natural doing these reviews. This is my first proper review ever, really. Like, I don't really do that, but it's been fun, and I can't wait to see you with more of my reviews of books that I've read and really liked, or maybe not necessarily liked. Thank you so much for watching if you got to the end, and please subscribe and like the video and all the good stuff, and thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye.